like I said before, this is, I'm Natalya Siciunas. We've got this for a class with Taylor Matthews, English 112, writing in the disciplines, writing and research in the disciplines, matter of fact. The date is May 2nd. Believe it or not, we're that far into the year already. And we are going to be analyzing a critical article on Woman Hollering Creek by Sandra, I'm going to say Cisneros, because I think that is how you would probably say her last name. I chose this article because it really intrigued me once I had read it. I was, before I'd even read it to begin with, I just thought the concept of Woman Hollering Creek sounded interesting, and it was something I wanted to look into, so I did, believe it or not. I mean, outside of that, though, I thought that the story was interesting to see our character. We're gonna go with, her name is Cleophilas to some sort of extent like that, but I think we'll address her as Cleo throughout the storytelling. Start things off, we are going to have segments of this podcast, if you will. We're gonna start off with some culture. We're gonna go over Mexican culture and how that, you know, was addressed in the critical article. We're going to go over the love aspect of Cleo and her story. And then we're going to go over isolation, and not just isolation, but the isolation that comes from the love that she experiences. And then we're going to be going over female unity that was highlighted in the critical article. And after that, we're going to wrap things up again with culture, but in America, and how that is her new life. Mexican culture, let's dive a little bit into that. She was in Mexico before she immigrated to America. And it was addressed in the beginning of the story. That was where she was coming from, you know, her father before she got married off to Juan Pedro, the man of the story, her super loving husband. I think a good thing that the critical article talks about is how she was essentially ripped away from some of the things that she was, you know, I don't know, it was like a tradition for her back at home. She was sort of ripped away from that when she married Juan Pedro and all of that sort of thing. When she married Juan Pedro initially, she was leaving that all behind, and something in that we can address is the difference between how she's treated back at home before she's married and how she will be treated within her Mexican culture if she were to return. A good piece of this the critical article talks about is how she, in the story, Cleo, is talking about how she'll be treated if she is to return back home, divorce her abusive husband, and go back home to that. Their customs are, you know, you're going to have to cook and you're going to have to clean and take care of things like a sort of traditional, like, Mexican household.
And on top of that, there's so much, like, prerequisite of shame for divorce.
Yeah.
It's like, if you get married, it's supposed to be your number one.
Locked in,
number one, don't change your opinions.
Absolutely.
They're your person.
Yeah. A good thing to note here, too, is that she, in the story, she has a child and is also pregnant with one. So she's got, you know, a kid and one on the way. And I feel like in a marriage that, you know, I feel like something that we can, you know, observe from a Mexican culture is that once you have a kid with somebody that you're married to, it's kind of like a, you know, you can't really go back on that.
Even if you're not married to them, it's like once you have a child with somebody, like you are blood bonded with that person.
Yeah, seriously. So, you know, while we're on marriage, let's love. Now we're talking about marriage. Marriage, there's love. Not always. In this story, Cleo struggles with an abusive husband, and critical article here is looking more into, you know, how she portrays her love and how within some of the soap operas that she's watching, she's sort of using that as an escape from, you know, what she is really dealing with, which, like said, abusive husband.
And I feel like the soap operas are not always, but are also a look into how she either wishes or imagines her life is like. Because at some points in the story, it's mentioned that she was like, oh yeah, what was it, beat me with a book, but
he's the same man who holds me and all that other stuff.
So the soap operas are like her kind of be like, well, if I look past the beatings, we're kind of like this, and he's like so romantic.
Yeah. I guess in that, one thing that we can consider is that she may be an unreliable narrator in a sense because of the fact that, you know, she kind of isn't considering fully what she's going through. She kind of excuses it because that's what she wants. She wants it to be that perfect thing, but she's not going to acknowledge it.
But she does have a slight personality shift because more towards the end of the story, where we're going to talk about this later, but whenever female unity comes into play in the creek, that's where her reliability re-ensues itself. Because in the beginning, obviously, like, she's clouding her vision, like, but he loves me, and then as the story progresses, her viewpoints on that changes.
Yeah. So, since she's being abused and is stuck in this situation that is, you know, really frequent, she feels really isolated. And so, moving into isolation, it's coming from that love, that marriage, that, you know, the thing that she wants so bad. She is instead being isolated from her surroundings, the people who she should be able to, you know, have relationships with and stuff like that. So, in the story, there's a point where Cleo is out to dinner with her husband and a group of his friends, and she does nothing but sit and hold his arm, smile. You know, she doesn't speak unless spoken to, and if she is speaking, it's very obviously nothing bad, because why would you say something bad if, you know, there might be consequences at home. Along with his isolation, we see that the most that she can do during the day is she can either sit and watch TV, or she can go across the street, or not across the street, but, you know, next door to the women who really, you know, the most they do is play cards. Of that, you know, she's stuck at home. There's a piece of the story where she is quite literally pointing out how everything in her surroundings is in a perfect place. There's, you know, she's memorized it all, and that just goes to show how, you know, much she is examining these things and how little she has to think about, so she takes up, you know, the space with memorizing her items in her house.
I think the memorizing part could also show how fragile she is right now in the story. Like, that's all she has to grip onto.
Absolutely. Our next section is the female unity in the creek, which is a good chunk of the critical article because it delves more into how the creek is symbolic of her resistance towards her abuser and the resistance towards the situation in all. She's starting to understand that this isn't the life that she wants, and she's going to resist that. The creek is actually, the critical article talks about it, it's a metaphor for that. And once she starts to explore the creek, literally, you know, within the story, she's at the same time coming to the realization of freedom and, you know, again, understanding that she can be free from the situation she's in now. You know, despite the traditions that are left back at home, the, you know, the things that she's going to face, you know, after her, what would you say, flee?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The creek also, like, this is just adding more onto that, but the creek is a very powerful metaphor for how Cleo feels about her freedom. The creek in the beginning of the story is, like, very small, like, it's not powerful, like it is, like, just a small little stream. And towards the end, whenever she's, like, invested in it, wants to know more about the history of it, and again, the female unity part, that's whenever the creek is described to turn into a river, I believe. Like, and I think the river, creek, whatever you want to call it,
there was a Spanish word they used in there for it.
Yeah, but I can't pronounce that to save my life. I think the creek is symbolizing her freedom. like, just so little but curious about it, and
Yeah.
then obviously meets up with friends. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't gotta get beat no more.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there was actually a point in the story where it was said that, you know, no one really went to that creek, you know, for the reason it was called Woman Hollering Creek, and, you know, it was rumored that there were noises coming from that, right? And, you know, nobody wanted to go near it. I feel like something that could, you know, stem from that is it's symbolic of the fact that not a lot of people can, like, kind of break free from those sorts of things, and they're hesitant to.
Yeah, hesitant, like, to even take that chance forward, to take that step, because I feel like this also can tie in with culture.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, inherently in most cultures, women have been assigned, like, pre-assigned roles no matter what you want to do.
Yeah.
And in some cultures, freedom is not one of those things.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why the creek is, like, a step forward in her progress.
Yeah. Aside from the creek, you know, there's a joining factor of, you know, the female unity. So let's get more into that. She meets a woman, I believe her name is Felicia, or we're just gonna go with Felice. You know, I think she's at, like, a GP appointment, general practitioner appointment.
The woman had, like, commented, like, noticed, like, hey, there's, like, some bruises on this girl. I'm gonna talk to her.
Yeah.
And then I think after the story they talked, but I think it was the woman to first notice, like,
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, the woman who's helping her out, Felice, she's on the phone. This woman has, you know, blue and black marks all over, you know, blah, blah, blah. So this woman, you know, takes upon herself, but with the help of another.
Yeah, that's the lady with the truck and later.
Felice, right?
Yeah, Felice, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. The woman who was on the phone was just her, you know, doctor person.
We're gonna call her Sarah. I don't.
Sure, yeah, Sarah. Sarah's on the phone, Felice, like, you know, this woman, you know, she really needs your help. She really needs your help, blah, blah, blah. Felice is the woman who later in the story helps, Cleo, you know, break free from all that, and, it's shown that in the story, you know, Felice, she's one of the only women that Cleo has seen with a truck that wasn't owned by her husband. She was driving it for herself, and there was a piece of the story where, instead of what we could have, you know, inferred that Cleo had been familiar with, you know, a woman staying more quiet and to herself and, you know, conforming to those roles that she had once seen, Felice is laughing, and it's, you know, not normal, really, that Cleo is seeing that, and so it was like an eye-opener in a way, I feel like, and that just brought them closer together, because in the end, you know, you see them, imagery, you know, you see them both laughing together, and I think that's really representative of the fact that, you know, she's finally done, you know, she's finally opened up again.
And Felice is almost like a role model. She's like that final push towards, like, freedom.
I absolutely think so. So, freedom. Land of the free.
America!
Culture part 2. Okay, now we're going to go over some American customs and how that can be sort of symbolic in this story.
In the story, it was very, very important and emphasized and reiterated over and over and over and over that they were in America. America, America, America. So, historically speaking, most of the time with foreigners or outsiders, America is often given the rep of, like, that is the place of new opportunities and freedom, and I'm gonna go to America, because what was it, when everybody, like, early on in something hundred started moving over, it's like,
yeah, like, that was the point. They were moving over for that new sense of, you know, ability.
New jobs, new opportunities. It was literally, like, the land of opportunities.
Yes.
It was something along those lines. Yeah. And I think that's why it's so reiterated in the story that she's in America. Because, especially in some parts of Mexico where people have a high, what is it whenever you immigrate outwards?
Immigration?
Yeah, immigration, like high immigration towards America or other countries. Some parts of Mexico are just looking for that land of opportunities, and America was that for this girl.
Yeah. mean, I think that's really it, you know. I think it's, you know, definitely an important thing to mark here is that America also occasionally has those sort of standard, you know, traditional wife standards for women. And, you know, despite the fact that she had come from that originally, it was at one point still how she was living.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the story, you know, America is all for, you know, freedom, and this is what her life is now. And she's definitely broken free from her abuse and, you know, that man.
Hopefully past cultural expectations, because America's a melting pot. Like there's everybody from everywhere here.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's a place where culture and backstories can just spread beautifully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, hey, America. I guess we'll wrap it up now.
Yeah. You want to do some final thoughts on the story?
Sure. Yeah. Why not? I mean, overall, I think it was a good story. You know, it leaves a lot of room for interpretation. You know, with the things that, you know, it's good to have interpretation with. It gives you a woman's story who, you know, it goes from her being trapped and stuck in a situation where she doesn't really think she can get out of, but, you know, it's shown that, you know, through unity and all these other good things that, you know, you can get out of that. And I think it's definitely good that, you know, the realism part, you know, is there, because a lot of people go through this, and I think Cleo can be a good character too, because she's relatable, and you know, the whole rhetorical triangle thing, you know, Sandra used pathos, you know, the more emotional part to draw in the readers and the audience. You know, I think it was a decent story for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think the story could definitely be someone's, like how the creek was for Cleo. That's what this story could be for someone who needs it. Like an eye opener, there's opportunities for me, really? For me?
Yeah, that's crazy too, because, you know, it's definitely interesting to know that, you know, something that's, you know, probably not seen as something like this could be that sort of eye opener for other people.
Yeah. I think it was a necessary story to be written.
Yeah. Good story.
It's not one that goes to waste.
Yeah. It's rated out of 10.
Rated out of 10? I'm gonna give a solid 8.5.
I'm also gonna give it 8.5.
The only points I'm taking off for it is because I was kind of confused reading some parts of it, like what was happening when, where exactly they were at, who was speaking, and this is a me problem, but there's some words in there I can't pronounce.
Yeah, there are points where, you know, aside from the words that aren't always determinable through someone who is solidly an English speaker, there are other points.
And from Stokes County.
Yeah, that North Carolina. There are points in the story where someone's speaking, but it's not necessarily quoted, so you can't really tell that someone is speaking. So it gets a little difficult to read, a little harsh on the eyeballs.
I feel like that's also might have been intentional, but even if it was intentional, great meaning. I'm just blind.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, there it is for you. Story about an abused woman who figures out her way to freedom.
Through
America.
female unity in a creek.
Yep. Hooray.
Hoorah.
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 Yeah. Good semester, good English semester. Thanks for having me.
You seem nice. You have very nice hair. Oh, and you're very stylish. You are so stylish. What?
Okay.
Her outfits are good. Have a good rest of your day, Miss Lady Ma'am. Watching this.
My English professor.
Yeah, your English professor.
Hi, Miss Matthews.
Hi, Miss Matthews. I hope the kids are well.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, she has kids?
Yes.
Oh, I hope the kids are even better, because I didn't know you had children.